The brain. Let's start with something that the brain does almost magically. This is a great TED Talk, so please click on the NJCTL, Your Brain Hallucinates Your Conscious Reality, and check it out. Our brains have sensory inputs that allow us to perceive both what is happening inside our bodies and what is happening outside, often simultaneously. Our brains also coordinate responses to changes in our internal and external environments, allowing us to maintain homeostasis. Our brain circuitry has evolved to keep us alive and to be able to pass on our genes to the next generation. The brain's organization can be studied in more than just one way. We can look at structural regions of the brain that are defined by physical characteristics, as well as functional regions of the brain that carry out processing relative to certain tasks. Complex activities use many structural and functional regions of the brain working together. And we'll start having some references down here that you could click on for more information. The brain has approximately 100 billion nerve cells. All right, that's one with, what do we have there, 11 zeros after it. The organized function of these nerve cells allows us to survive and reproduce, to learn, to feel emotion, to have consciousness, and to investigate our world. The most general structural regions of the brain are the cerebrum, it's this yellow code here, the cerebellum, down here the blue code, and finally the brainstem. Let's start with the cerebrum. Its functions include thinking, judgment, problem solving, speech, coordinating input from sense organs, and coordinating movement. The cerebrum has gray matter towards the surface and white matter in the interior. The gray part of the cerebrum is called the cerebral cortex. It has many folds, forming gyri over here, and sulci, which are valleys. And here's your sulci over here. And basically the whole picture, you have the gyri and the sulci. That gives it a very large surface area, which certainly gives it more room to hold all those nerve cells. The cerebral cortex has right and left halves called hemispheres. Despite their names, the right hemisphere controls the left side of the body, and the left hemisphere controls the right side of the body. However, they are not completely separate structures. The two halves communicate with one another via the corpus callosum in the center of the cerebrum. The brainstem connects the cerebrum to the spinal cord. The brainstem has a variety of functions that help with hearing, movement, eye function, balance, and facial expression. The medulla of the brainstem maintains many aspects of homeostasis, including breathing and blood circulation. It also coordinates such reflexes such as sneezing, coughing, and swallowing. The cerebellum, which is Latin for little brain, kind of makes sense, right? Is a smaller portion of the brain located at the back of the head. It helps with movement, balance, and posture. It also plays roles in emotions and social behavior. Each hemisphere of the cerebrum can be divided into 4 lobes, each with specialized functions: frontal lobes, temporal lobes, parietal lobes, and occipital lobes. So here are the lobes. Here's the well-named frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and down here, the temporal lobe. In the past, functional regions of the brain were determined by studying the function loss or losses of people who had suffered brain damage. A map of the brain was created by correlating the person's area of damage with their loss of functioning. Modern approaches to studying the functional organization include the use of functional MRI, or magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI. People are asked to perform certain tasks during imaging. The areas of the brain in use during such tasks light up in the fMRI image as blood flows to those regions. Blood flow and neuron activity occur together. So clearly the advantage here is you can do all kinds of different functions, and you don't need people who have been hurt by some sort of accident or disease. So here's our 4 lobes. The frontal lobes are the largest lobes in the brain. They control decision-making and complex behaviors such as planned movement, smell recognition, and speech ability. The prefrontal cortex is part of the frontal lobe, and it greatly contributes to aspects of personality, including impulse control, attention, and cognitive flexibility. Temporal lobes make up the sides of the brain. They're involved with short-term memory, speaking ability, musical rhythm, and facial recognition. Parietal lobes, middle part of the brain. Object recognition, spatial relationships, interpreting pain and touch, and speech comprehension. And finally, the occipital lobes make up the back part of the brain and interpret vision. Other smaller parts of the brain. Amygdala. These are small sections of the temporal lobe. The amygdalas are emotional centers of the brain. It's where we process fear, anxiety, and aggression, and where we store the memories associated with fear. The amygdala's afferent neurons control the autonomic nervous system. And how's that for a tongue twister? The hippocampus, which is Greek for seahorse, is a memory center and is very important for learning. It helps us associate memories with various senses. It is a key brain structure for remembering new things. It also helps us navigate and perceive our location in space. Brain signals move through the brain. They are not located within one structure. As we respond to our environment in complex ways and learn from our interactions, we use many parts of our brain that all work together. A system in the brain is a pathway through many regions of the brain and allows us to form conditioned behavioral and emotional responses to the environment. An important example of a brain system is the limbic system. It's the center of our emotional lives. It is important for our survival because it is activated when we are learning, eating, reproducing, caring for children, and responding to danger. It plays a part in memory formation and emotional responses. The limbic system uses neurons in many brain structures, so that's the point of a system. Okay, it's not just one part of the brain, it's different parts working together. So in this case, it's the amygdala, hippocampus, the thalamus, which is a signaling relay section, and the hypothalamus. And of course it says but not limited to, so there's other objects here in the system. The limbic system also interacts with the prefrontal cortex and the brainstem. The limbic system is activated when we experience the natural pleasures such as eating and working out. The reward circuit is activated by dopamine, that's a chemical, signaling in the limbic system. When a reward is received, dopamine surges. Feeling pleasure during activities that ensure our survival and the survival of our genes is adaptive. The limbic system helps us engage in healthy, beneficial activities.